So we're going to attempt a little bit of a repair today. My venerable 1907 Niendorf baby grand is about to be retired from active service here at the studio, and hopefully going to go to a new home for its sort of retirement home. But what precipitated all this really was right at the end of November, just at my busiest time, getting ready for numerous exam accompaniments and who knows what else. Sadly, 2 hammers sheared. Next door neighbour hammers, I don't know whether there was some alignment problem or a bit of debris got between them or whatever, but they both snapped. One was a lovely clean break across the grain, which gave me a nice big gluing surface, plenty of room to reinforce on the outside, and the gluing up job went perfectly, and it's back in situ and working just fine. Sadly, as you can see, this one is almost a shear directly across, and it was not happy to be repaired. I wasn't ever so optimistic, but did try it, but it didn't go well. And of course now the surfaces are nicely glue hardened and it really doesn't want to be repaired at all now. So the plan is, I've ordered up a new replacement shank. So what we're going to attempt to do, if possible, is get some heat on this little bit of hide glue around there, push the remainder of the old shank out of the hammerhead, and then hopefully eventually get it glued up with some more hide glue. That's the plan anyway. How much of that we get done today, I'm not sure, but we'll make a start and see where we get to. So as you can see, I've now got the old hammerhead just holding some mole grips. Just not too much pressure on the grips. Obviously my concern is not to mar or spoil the actual hammerhead itself, but I need something heat-proof to hold it with, and hopefully the metal of the grips as well will go some way towards protecting the felt as I apply a bit of heat to this glue joint here. Obviously I don't want to mar or spoil the felt in any way, but I don't want to burn the wood either, so we're just going to go very steady, very gently, and just see if we can get that to ease up a little bit. The glue's already starting to change colour a little bit there. See that? Not sure we've done enough just yet, but let's just see if there's any movement. Some of the surplus glue is certainly coming away, which is a good start. Really nice and glued inside. We've got a little way to go yet on the heat front. I'm still not too hot, so that's okay. Just going to get a tiny little bit more grip on that because it's just moving fractionally in the grooves. Fraction of a turn more on that. Try that again. She's nearly out. Yeah, there we go. Lovely. Yep. Minimal heat required, thankfully. A nice clean hole as well. I don't think very much glue is actually on the inside of that, which is lovely. Just a bead around there to seal it, so too big that one. Try that one. Yeah, that's a lovely clean surface. And hopefully that will be a good surface to receive the new shank. I'm very optimistic about that. That looks really good. So what we've got now is the new shank versus one of its neighbours, which I've taken out of the action to give us some sort of datum. As you can see, I've clamped them down to the bench. I'm using a little jigsaw blade as a shim between them to stop them butting up completely. And I've paid quite a bit of attention to getting the pivot points in exactly the same place. You might be able to make out that the shanks, the new replacement shank and the old one, are not absolutely identical. They're extremely close, but not quite identical. So I've marked in here where the pivot points are on each of the shank bases, so that I can line the pivot points up as the main point of reference. I've got it shimmed with paper. At the moment you can probably see this is sitting a little higher than the other one, but with the weight of the hammer head on, I think that will leave us just where we want to be. We might need to tinker with that in a moment. But the idea is to get this as near parallel as we can, so that we're going to have to eyeball this. There's no really effective way of measuring it, but I want to give myself the best possible chance of this ending up in the right place. So the old head is a good fit onto the new shank. I'm going to slip it into place now and do a dry fit and try and mark where I'd like it to end up. So if we just very carefully slip that down onto the shank. And as you can perhaps see now, the weight of that has now left me with two nice parallel shanks in that plane. I'm just going to tinker around with that, the position of that head for a moment or two. It's a little bit slippery on the shank at the moment, so it's not easy to position it exactly in the right place, but let's have a look. That looks pretty decent, I think. And we'll just see what we look like across the back of them. It's the leading edge, of course, that matters, because that's I think that is reasonable. Of course, now I moved it. Let's try that again. You know, let's see if we can just position that and mark it, just so we've got something to shoot for later on. Right, there we go. So I think we're ready to go. I'm going to put in a moment a sort of collar of hide glue around the edge of that, which I'm then going to sort of push into place. It's a bit counterintuitive for a woodworker, because you tend to assume that the entire gluing face, we want to get glue everywhere we possibly can in most joints and get it everywhere, but as you probably saw from the old hammer, there is pretty much no glue inside the socket there, and that of course is to make it reversible or adjustable if we need to. So I don't want to get a gallon of glue down there. My glue is basically going to go round the base of the hammer head. So this is it's probably somebody's copyright, that, isn't it? I'll probably have to blur that out. So as I say, I'm just going to use a pin just to apply a little bit of this stuff as a kind of collar. This has the great advantage that, like the stuff that we took off, it can be heated and reversed, which is obviously helpful. You can also probably see it's really quite viscous, it's not running all over the place, so I can sort of stack it up on itself, as it were, and that gives me a reasonable chance of being able to push it up against the shank. I'll probably need to put some more on when I get it in situ, but you know, softly, softly catch your monkey and all that. We'll go steady. Try to avoid getting it down the sides of the hammerhead if I can. Right, that might be enough to get us going. I don't know until we get started, but let's give it a try. I've got some damp tissue there for a clean up in case I need it. Let's see if we can ease this into place and see what sort of a mess we can make. Right, where's my pin gone? Position. As you can see, this glue, the whole advantage of this glue is that it goes off very slowly, so we've got plenty of time to fiddle with things. Parallel looks pretty good actually, I'm pretty happy with that. And I think the edge of the felt also looks pretty decent. Just going to see if I can encourage that very slightly north. And I've moved the alignment doing that. Okay. Right, fingers crossed. We'll let that go off overnight, let it have a good settle with the glue, and then tomorrow we'll check the alignment in the action very carefully, and if we're happy, I'll actually put another layer of glue on top of that to help it reinforce that we look like we're going in the right direction. So here we are again, just to check the state of the glue. I'm reasonably happy that the alignment has stayed where I wanted it to be, so I'm going to unclamp them now from the bench. And as you can see, there's the beginning of a glue collar built up there. It's not ever so big at the minute, in case I needed to adjust it, but it's secure, it's not going anywhere. So my next job is to slip it back into the action as a test fit and just make sure that it really is clearing all the other hammers out of the side and that there's no obstructions anywhere. It might be that we need to trim that little piece of shank. I know some repairers do that before they put the hammer head on, but in this instance I wanted it to match reasonably well and I couldn't predict the angle before I did it, so I didn't want to cut it ahead of time and then wish I'd not bothered. So next job we'll pop it back in the action and see how it feels. So I've tried the new hammer in its place in the action. It looks really good. There's no sideways fouling whatsoever. I needed to open that little alignment socket at the bottom for the alignment pin up very slightly because this is an off-the-shelf part. The little slot for that was very slightly too narrow for the pin, so I've had to open that up very slightly, but it's sitting there very happily and striking nicely. Obviously this is going to need trimming back, but I'll deal with that once I finally finish the gluing, so I know that it's as robust as possible. So what I'm going to try and do now is add a slightly bigger collar of hide glue around that, just to make it that little bit more reliable before I start subjecting it to any more abuse. Sort of picking that up. The glue could do with being a bit warmer, really, I think, really. But this is a little dog medicine syringe, which is great for positioning it, but this glue is a bit on the viscous side, so it's a bit reluctant to go up into the syringe. But I think we'll give it a try, see how we get on. good run on that side, less good run on the other side. Well, it's not the prettiest glue joint you've ever seen, but I'm not sure that's the point at this point. Hopefully that will do the job. And once again, we'll leave that to go off. I'm going to return to it tomorrow for the final tidying up and refitting. So now we've got the hammer completed in terms of the gluing. I'm very happy with the glue collar that's built up around it. It seems very secure. So as you can see, I've got it clamped in a rather strange way because I need a nice secure clamping that'll give me room to get to this end part of the hammer shaft that needs to be trimmed away. So I'm going to now try and trim it with this coping saw, which will give me a nice clean cut and allow me to get in nice and tight to the top edge of the hammer without doing any damage. If I was a proper piano tech, I'd have special tools for clipping hammer shanks, but because the top of the hammer is actually slightly profiled to allow for where it fits into the rest of the action, I didn't want to just set about it with something inappropriate. So I'm using this because it will give me a nice low impact way of cutting it with a nice fine blade, and then at the end hopefully I can clean it up with files if that's necessary. Let's give it a try. That's extremely satisfactory. Let's see if we can just tidy the end of the hammer shank up now. Very carefully paring away some of the excess there where the top, it's hard to tell from that camera angle, but the top of the hammer is sort of profiled on an angle. Are we happy? So finger ends are better than eyes, don't they? Something, it's not quite flush. We'll just work this a little bit harder, but nearly there. Okay. I think I'm fairly happy with that. So next job is to get it into the action and make sure everything fits nicely before we put the action back into the piano. So now we're going to put the hammer back into the action. Just make sure we've lined up on that pivot pin satisfactorily. And we'll try and start off with some semblance of lining up, and then we'll adjust if necessary. old-fashioned wood screws, so you can just let them find their own thread that's already been cut. Lovely tapered things that you can't buy anymore. As you can see, as I'm tightening, it's just moving itself, as you'd expect, slightly out of alignment, so I think we'll just try and help it back across a little if we can. I'm just comparing keys around it for feel. In particular that escapement. Click. It's that return I'm a little bit concerned about, but well, that's sitting nicely. That's sitting nicely. And there's no fouling or encroaching of any space on that one. So the final test now is to get the action back in the piano and make sure it's lining up satisfactory in terms of string contact. But I think that looks potentially a success. Just check for obstructions that it goes in, make sure we don't catch anything we didn't ought to. Right at the bottom there, the mighty close. I think we're okay. Just help it past the spray. That's a better return. Fingers crossed. As you can tell, there's a very slight misalignment on the felts there in terms of the grooves that the strings have cut over many years, so we're getting a very slightly fluffier tone on that. So I might just have a bit of a further adjust on those alignment points on the action, just to see if we can straighten those hammers up, just to get them right in the right place. But apart from that, I think I'm very happy.